It's been going on 10 days now. Haven't gone manic. And the last time before that, it was 11 days being in the depressive state. I should just say depression. But, so the mania, the only thing that's really staved it off from being too bad is the amount of work that I've had to do, working every day, and having made more work for myself with creative projects. But over the years, it's gone less from the invincible feeling of like anything's possible, but less than anything's possible, that like I can't fail. It's gone less from that because I know enough now at this point, and it's more about being hyper aware and hypersensitive, and from that deeper state of anxiety. And so this change has kind of happened probably within the last 4 years. It's developed when I had my first panic attack was in a grocery store in Chicago when I was living there. It was a Mexican food store, and I just remember feeling like the walls were closing in around me, and that I was hyper aware of every little noise and person, and feeling surrounded and feeling anxious about it and wanting to get out of there. So since then, I didn't think much of it until later, and so come to realize that I've been having panic attacks, and there's a full range of symptoms that you can have with panic attacks. You might not really even realize that you're having a panic attack when you're having one. You know, you can have an elevated heart rate, mind is racing, tunnel vision, easily surprised by things. You think that you might see something when it's not really there, and it's not delusions. It's not like you see something that's not there. It's that like you're startled by something that you would not normally be startled by. Like I turned around the other day and the room was darker than I thought it was going to be, and it was like a wall of blackness that seemed like something was standing right in front of me, and it put me just in this freaky state of alert, and I think my adrenaline was pumping because of it. So things like that, where elevated heart rate, sweating for no reason, just excessive sweating and nervousness. But more than that, sort of like the dreaded feeling that something terrible is going to happen, and having to be hyper aware about that, and being in a state of alert, and that's sort of where it's gone at this point. And so I've had to like focus on my breathing a lot, remind myself that I'm not in danger, that I'm safe. And here's what's fucked up about this: I'm not safe. No one's safe. That's the reality of it, right? If you're a smart person, you know you're not safe. You can't make that assumption. And that doesn't mean you have to be in a just constant state of awareness of worry for your own safety, but it also means that, like, I mean, because that's not a normal response, right? But it's important to have the knowledge, right? That you know, just because you live in civilization or society or a city, that it doesn't guarantee your safety. As cities are just, concrete jungles full of animals, and you're safer in an actual forest than you are in a concrete one. So that's just a fact, but it's one of those things. It's one of those realities that can become all-consuming because you just knowing that reality, and then you focus on it, and by focusing on it, it puts you just in this unnecessary state of hyper awareness, and I just, yeah, you know, okay, at this point, not having slept very well because my mind racing. That's the, you reach to a point of exhaustion with it, and then just the fatigue sets in, and this is where it just feels really fatiguing. But some of the other things that you can get from feeling this constant state of panic is chest pains and numbness, and that's other symptoms that the chest pain has been something that has come up recently, and there's just no explanation for it as far as being healthy goes. I'm healthy and I have a good heart. Yeah, but I came to find that it was tied to the anxiety because during a panic attack, I started to feel the chest pains. And then when I took Xanax, they lessened, and I don't take Xanax every time I feel anxiety. And I've been splitting the pills so that I'm just used to a lesser dose, and I just need it to get me through so that so that I can function without exploding at people for every little thing. But the one consistency is that when I'm starting to panic, I start to feel the pain, and then when the panic goes away, it goes away too. So it's important to get sleep as much as you can when this happens. Well, you know what? It's important for me to get sleep when this happens, and to try to stay calm. And it's really better to not be around people if you can help it, because I come off as being aggressive. Or I think I feel like I do. I have anxiety that I come off as being aggressive when really I'm just like saying things very strongly. And I've noticed my swearing goes up a lot more when I'm in this state. And there's a better chance that I'm going to not yell at somebody. There's a better chance that I'm just going to be unnecessarily aggressive towards people who just, just public interactions. Somebody startling me, or being faster to even flip somebody off. It's like normally I just don't care. I just whatever. But feeling like this, it's like, yeah, every little mistake is a personal attack, and because of that, yeah, you start to take things personal, and then and it's hard not to let your mind like bury you in a thought process that becomes very destructive and acidic. And I can see how this can be very wearing, because I'm not the kind of person who wants to focus on those kinds of things, and then I suddenly find myself focusing on those kinds of things. So and then it takes an effort not to focus on those things, and the effort takes energy, and the energy feels exhaustive. There is an analogy that I found. I read on the internet once. It's the spoon analogy. It's like it came from, I think, some fucking blogger who was trying to talk to a friend about like what it feels like to deal with these sorts of issues, and she used the analogy like, okay, like they were in a restaurant, that's what it is, and it is she was explaining to her friend, like, okay, so she grabbed all the spoons and she says, okay, so here's all the spoons you have in it, and every time you do something, you have to give me a spoon, okay, and you can only do as many things as you have spoons, and then Once you're out of spoons, you're pretty much useless. And so then she had her friend walk her through the day. She had her friend walk her through the day of her normal day, and starting with, you wake up, right? And so she's like, okay, so she had like 5 spoons in her hands, and she's like, okay, you wake up. What do you do? Well, I get up and I brush my teeth and check my email. She's like, okay, to get up and brush your teeth, you got to give me a spoon. It's like, really? It takes a whole spoon just to get out of bed. Yeah, it takes a whole fucking spoon to get out of the fucking bed. Because, and you might not even realize it at first, but it adds up. Because what it takes, and this isn't just for feeling mania. This is also just depression in general. But this ties into mania in that, like, okay, I wake up, hopefully not in a rage, not having been woken up suddenly, and I try to not feel like the world is caving in around me, just checking my email, like, what the hell's happened, checking my Facebook, checking whatever, all the fucking people I'm gonna have to deal with. And so yeah, that takes a spoon, okay, and managing not to start a stupid petty argument because I was startled. That takes a spoon. Driving, regular interactions, like it doesn't all equate, being a constant drain, because sometimes it can be refilling. Sometimes you can get filled up, not realizing it, encouraged, or you get a moment of peace. So every once in a while, out of this, you'll feel calm, and it'll be almost refreshing. Taking a nap kind of gives you kind of a boost. So things like that, but the analogy really speaks to the finite amount of mental energy that you have in a given day in order to deal with what you're dealing with and accomplish what you want to accomplish. And so the energy that it takes to make it through the day without starting an argument, without freaking out over something, forcing myself not to care in this state. Yeah, you have to lie to yourself. And so tying it back around to you are not in danger. I tell myself this: you're not in danger. You're safe. Everything's calm. Everything's fine. And this takes me all the way back to being a kid, because the problem was I used to have to tiptoe around the house because my dad is bipolar, and so this is what my dad was going through. Only he had a little kid, 2 kids, and no wonder it was disastrous. And so I realized in my mid-30s that I walk on my tiptoes, and it started when I was a kid, to move as silently as I could, because if no one could hear me, my dad couldn't hear me moving around, I wouldn't attract his attention, and by not attracting his attention, I have less risk of getting beat. And so that's the connection. Be as silent as possible, and you'll be fine. And I remember when he would take naps during the day, or he'd be asleep, or he'd be resting or doing something, no startling noises, no mistakes. You drop something and something clangs or breaks on the floor. It could be an entire afternoon of beatings and lectures and maybe no dinner. And so you learn to be quiet, and you learn to tiptoe by way of survival, or what you feel like is survival. And so that started for me as very early. In some ways, it's always been the problem in the back of my head, whether it's conscious or not. What it is Um, yeah, in my mid 30s, I remember walking around my apartment, just me and Laura, and uh, I'm walking on my tiptoes, and I just stopped and I just realized, like, holy shit. And I was feeling like how I'm feeling right now, you know, feeling like the anxiety, and and I realized, like, I am still a little kid tiptoeing around his dad. I'm still that little fucking kid. So, uh, and that's what happens. You transform into this kid. I transform into this kid when this happens. I'm this scared little kid who every little sound frightens, and but since I'm an adult now, I can lash out and people take me seriously, and that can be scary, and that has power, right? So, who wants to be a bully? No one. No one who's worth being around. And that's and so you hold it. What can you do, right? You explode, and everyone hates you. You become like this terrorizer of the people who love you and want to be around you when you're not like this, and and convince themselves that maybe it's not so bad, right? Because that's what happens when you give in and you start exploding, and then it becomes an abusive relationship. And I refuse to let it be like that. I refuse. And so yeah, you hold it in. You hold it in, and and because of that, you're able to have friends. You're able to have people who want to be around you, but it fucking takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of me. Um, so yeah, that's just how I'm feeling. But the good thing too is that I can feel like I'm feeling like this is probably the end of it. I'm almost out of it. It's lessened. When I can control it the most is when it's either just starting or just ending. When it's the most exhaustive is when it's at its peak, and that could be like, you know, like the door closes too loud, and that could be enough to where, like, it can send me into this anxiety riddled cycle. Um, you just ruin my whole day. My whole day. If something goes wrong in the morning, it can ruin my entire day. And at its worst, at its worst, and it's like watching yourself lock your keys in your car. It's like, oh my god, what am I doing? What am I doing? And then your keys are locked in the car. And you're guaranteed a set amount of time having to deal with that. And because it has gotten worse recently. Well, because it was worse, it would take me out for a whole day, and now that I'm starting to feel better, it's not taking me out for a whole day, but it's making me feel exhausted. I went to take a light nap yesterday, and just to try to have enough energy to teach, and it ended up being like a 4 hour nap, and I just slept right through the alarm. And if it wasn't for Laura coming home and waking me up, like, I might have been late to class teaching. So yeah, it knocks me out. But it's better than what it was, which was me hiding in my room for an entire day. And I'll take it. I'll take it. But fucking hell. Yeah. So the other things that have really helped, because I should not just talk about the bad. I should also talk about what's helping, and it has been mostly my friends, trying to be as positive as I can, teaching. I try to put that energy that happens, that anxious energy, into being the best teacher that I can be, and and the best artist that I can be, but that can be a solitary thing as far as being an artist, and so that feels good after the fact, right? Because I'll put my energy into the art, and I won't necessarily feel anything until I'm out, and then I see what I've done, and then I feel good. So it has long term gains, but or unless I do something really small and I can accomplish something very quickly, and then I can get some like short term gain. But if I'm working on a big project or a long term project, like the painting I'm working on now, I'm going to be working on it for God damn, I don't want it to be longer than another couple months, but you just, who knows? Um, yeah, it feels good to work on it, but like, not until you're done. So with a smaller project, it's like, okay, well, I can pump this out, and yeah, it feels good. So that can help, but then also like trying to teach somebody something and seeing that they get it, and then having that interaction and showing how passionate you are for something, and seeing that passion sort of take hold. That is very immediate, and that's very powerful, and so it can puts me on a high that is a more positive high as opposed to it being more negative. So that's where doing good comes in, and also talking it out. So like, for as much as I could say all day that I'm doing these podcasts and recording this shit for other people, it really helps. It helps me more than anything. After I did the podcast about suicide, I felt like I had come to understand it on a different level, mostly because I'd never talked that long, that specifically about the subject, um, and I hadn't prepared, and it forced me to prepare it. Now with something like this is just what's coming to me, and I have to get it out. But getting it out, saying it out loud, I feel like I'm coming to understand it better, and by coming to understand it better, I can find workarounds to get it to be able to function, right? This is one of the things that I tell my students. I tell my students, like, they ask me questions, like technical questions, and I tell them, like, I think about technique as a way to get around um, your natural tendency to have a bad habit. So if you scribble, or if you're heavy-handed, you make sure that you're working with a long piece of lead, for instance, so that if you're heavy-handed, the lead breaks. And you're gonna go through you're not gonna go through that many pencils before you realize, like, I'm wasting pencils and I should probably have a light hand. But it's a technique that you develop to work around a bad habit. So this fucking issue is like a bad habit. I think about it like a bad habit, and that just means I gotta find a workaround, right? And so this is just another workaround, and it makes me feel good, and it helps me understand it better. And then if I have the balls to post it, it might help somebody else. So if you can find a way to work around it and find little tricks to give yourself a boost, to keep you going on the positive, so that you're not focused on the negative, because the negative becomes an acid, and it eats away at you, and it makes you eat away at your relationships and the people around you. So you gotta force yourself to be easygoing. You have to force yourself to relax. You have to lie to yourself and tell yourself that you're safe, even when you don't feel like you are, because you're in a hyper state of awareness of every little possible stimulus around you. And it's okay. It's okay to lie to yourself if the outcome gets you a stable life. And you just have to know when the right time is to do it. We tell ourselves little lies all the time to get through the day. So at least some people do, or maybe more people do than want to admit. But this is one of the lies I tell myself: you're fine, you're safe. Nothing's gonna be okay. Nothing's gonna go wrong. Of course things are gonna go wrong. It's just a matter of when. But you address that when you get to it. There is no sense in dreading this unforeseen thing on the horizon. You have to live today. You can't live in the future. You can't live in the past. You just have to live right now and shoot for something that you want to happen in the future. But the things that have stopped me from acting the most, when the anxiety has gotten to me the worst, was when I dread and worry and fret about the what if, and I let the what if stop me. What if it doesn't work out? What if something goes wrong? And then you play a million scenarios in your head about all the possible things that could go wrong, and then how am I going to react to that? Well, who the fuck knows how you're going to react to it? But I'm still alive, so and I'm not homeless and on the streets, and you know, I've been working full time since I was 16, so I know how to make it work, right? I have a history now of having figured it out. So I say this to myself, and then I say, okay. In my finer moments of being able to get myself to do something over the anxiety, this is what happens. I look down the road and I say, I've figured out the what ifs before. Every time I've been determined to do something, more often than not, I've succeeded. When I really, really, really wanted something, I've succeeded, no matter how long it takes. And so I'm a creative person who can figure things out. I know this. And I tell myself, okay, well, you lie to yourself and you say, like, because in the moment you feel like, oh, this is insurmountable. I can't foresee all the variables, and therefore I just shouldn't do it. And so I get myself to do it by lying to myself and saying, oh, well, you'll be able to figure it all out. And then you jump in. Right now, this is just like, okay, now this could be as simple as I gotta go to work. That's where this comes in, where it's like it's not like I need to make a giant life choice. This is like I have to get to work. I have to go in there. I gotta face somebody. I gotta walk in the studio and I have to address a room full of students and I have to teach them about anatomy. Oh yeah, that's easy, right? Oh Jesus, and then what if, and it just goes on and on and on. So I have to do this, right? And that's what I tell myself. I lie to myself. I'm gonna get through it. Nothing is gonna go wrong. And of course, sometimes things go wrong. But when things go wrong and you're in it and you're in the moment, you figure it out, and because you need to survive. Because you can't just say, well, I give up and sit on the ground and fold your arms and give up. I mean, you can't do that. And so I got to trust myself to know, because and here's one of the things that I think about too. I had a fire, and the fire took just about everything that we had, and but when the fire, I tried to fight the fire. It started in the kitchen, and when I told Laura to go downstairs, to run down there, direct them, get out of the burning place, and I told her I was right behind her. And then I stood there in the living room, and I realized, like, it's gone. It's all gone. Like, that realization hit me. Boom. The fire. Okay, it's raging in the kitchen. I can feel the heat. The smoke is starting to reach my head as far as the level of where it was filling up the room. And I instantly snapped into plan B. And plan B was, what if my house is burning? What do I do? Okay, well, I saved my fucking art. And I had already worked out a plan for this in my head, because that's what happens when you have anxiety. You worry about the minutiae of all the fucking potential things that could go wrong. And one of the things that I thought could go wrong was that, okay, the house light's on fire. I've been a general contractor. I've seen plenty of bad electric, and I've had electric light on fire in front of me. I knew this was a possibility, so I kicked into plan B, and plan B was get my paintings out, all my big paintings out, and go from there. And time slowed down, it crawled. I experienced a time warp like I've never experienced before in my life. And I did what I needed to do. And yeah, okay. I mean, it wound me up in the hospital, but I did what I needed to do when the time came. And I've never I've been in some crazy situations before, and that in my life, and that's one of the craziest. And so I made it through, and I'm still alive, and I still got my fucking art. Well, I lost a lot of art too, but I got all the pieces that I really cared about, and they're still with me. They're my babies. So I know that I can do what needs to be done when the time comes. I know this. I've continuously proved it to myself. But when you're feeling anxiety, it doesn't matter. And so that's when it comes time to, you know, it's not good to dwell on the past, but it's also good to remember your accomplishments and recognize what those accomplishments are to help get yourself through when you feel like the world is coming down around you. So it's been the last 10 days for me. Thankfully, I've had a lot of creative work to do, and I've had a lot of good friends, and I'm working towards a lot of good things. And I put my energy into those things because once you have the ball running on stuff that you want to do, you might as well put all that into it, right? Let what exhausts you be inching towards what you love. So, yeah, it can feel like wrestling a dragon, but it can also feel like if you do it right, it can hurt, but at the same time, it can also be beneficial if you learn how to utilize it. So, but again, I'm speaking from a point of feeling better with it now than I have in a while. So that's good, and I hope to keep on this track. So that's it. I'm talking in circles now.